What if everything we know about prophets is only half the story? What if the revered figures who have shaped the course of human history were not merely divine messengers, but rather the last inheritors of a knowledge so ancient, so profound, it was almost lost to time? These figures, spanning cultures and centuries, are described as people chosen by God to deliver His word, to guide humanity through turbulent times. But what if these figures were more than just divine intermediaries? What if they were the bearers of wisdom passed down from a forgotten age? A civilization far more advanced than we have ever been told. Think about it for a moment. The biblical Noah, the Egyptian Imhotep, the Sumerian Enki. What if these prophets were not simply passing on divine messages, but rather preserving ancient knowledge from a time before the great floods? A time when humanity might have been far more advanced than we could ever imagine? Could it be that these figures, revered by so many, were the last echoes of a lost world? Hiding in plain sight, guarding secrets too dangerous to fully understand. Imagine the possibility that the wisdom these prophets carried wasn't inspired by a higher power, but instead passed down from the survivors of an ancient, forgotten civilization. Could the ancient world have been far more advanced than we thought, and these figures were the final link to this lost age? The idea that the prophets were not just divinely chosen, but were also the last keepers of esoteric knowledge challenges everything we think we know about ancient history. Were these figures truly just messengers from God, or were they the surviving scholars of an era lost to cataclysmic events? Welcome to Celestial Chronicles, where we dig deep into these mysteries and uncover the secrets of our past. Stick around as we explore how these prophets could be much more than we've ever been told. The mythology of prophets across cultures across the world. There are stories of prophets who are seen as people chosen to deliver messages from the divine. These figures appear in nearly every major culture, and while their names and details might change, their roles seem strikingly similar. From the Bible to the ancient Sumerian texts, prophets are seen as guides, those who bridge the gap between the gods and humanity. But could these prophets be more than just messengers? Could they be the guardians of ancient wisdom passed down from a forgotten time? In many cultures, prophets didn't just deliver divine messages. They often shared knowledge that went beyond ordinary understanding. For example, in the Bible, Moses didn't just bring the 10 Commandments. He also had deep knowledge of Egypt's wisdom. Similarly, the ancient Sumerian figure Antichrist survived a great flood and is said to have shared knowledge about survival and civilization. These figures weren't just conveying divine will, they were also giving humanity tools to survive and thrive, as if they held ancient knowledge beyond their time. The prophet Tiresias in Greek mythology is another example. He wasn't just a figure delivering messages. He had insights into the very nature of life and the future, knowledge that seemed almost beyond human capacity. Similarly, in Hinduism, Vyasa compiled the Vedas and shared deep wisdom that was thought to have been given by the gods. Could these prophets have been more than mere divine messengers? What if they were the survivors or heirs of a lost civilization, tasked with passing down ancient wisdom? The common thread in all these stories is that the prophets carry knowledge that is both sacred and mysterious. It's possible that they were not just spreading messages from God, but also preserving the secrets of a time when humanity was far more advanced than we realize. Could these figures have inherited knowledge from an ancient, forgotten age, and were they chosen to guide humanity through the remnants of that wisdom? Pre-flood civilizations. Are they just myths or the truth? Many cultures across the world have stories about a great flood that wiped out an advanced civilization. These floods are not just myths. They are a recurring theme in ancient texts, from the Bible to the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Bible tells the story of Noah and the flood, while the Sumerians speak of Antichrist surviving a similar deluge. In Hinduism, the story of Manu also tells of a great flood that wiped out most of humanity. But what if these floods weren't just stories? What if they marked the end of an ancient, advanced civilization? Some theories suggest that before these floods, humanity was far more advanced than we realize. Archaeological evidence shows that ancient cultures, like the Egyptians and Sumerians, had knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and engineering far ahead of their time. The question is, where did this knowledge come from? And why did these civilizations seem to appear almost suddenly, with no clear sign of gradual development? What if the knowledge these ancient cultures had was passed down from a civilization that existed before the floods? Could it be that the great flood stories were not just about natural disasters, but about the collapse of a much more advanced society? Many believe that these ancient civilizations were the last survivors of a forgotten age, and that the prophets we read about in sacred texts were the last people to carry their wisdom. These ancient societies may have been wiped out in a cataclysmic event, but the survivors, the prophets, kept the knowledge alive, passing it down to the next generations. But if these civilizations were so advanced, why don't we see more evidence of them today? Was it destroyed by the flood, hidden by ancient forces, or simply erased from history? The mystery remains, and as we continue to explore the past, we may discover that the answers lie in the stories of these ancient prophets. Prophets and ancient wisdom. The knowledge keepers, when we think of prophets, we often imagine them as divine messengers, people chosen by God to bring important messages to humanity. What if these prophets weren't just delivering divine instructions, but were also the keepers of ancient wisdom, knowledge passed down from a time before the great floods and other disasters? This idea suggests that the prophets were not just messengers, but scholars or guardians, protecting important knowledge that was hidden from the world. Look at figures like Moses, who not only brought the Ten Commandments, but also had deep knowledge of Egypt's wisdom and practices. Or consider the Sumerian Atrahasis, who survived a flood and is said to have held ancient knowledge on how to preserve civilization. These prophets seem to have known much more than what might be expected of their time. What if their wisdom didn't come from divine inspiration alone, but from an ancient source, a lost civilization that had passed down this knowledge over generations? In many ancient texts, we see the idea of secret knowledge being handed down to the right people, knowledge that could shape entire societies. The Egyptians, for example, believed in a deep understanding of the cosmos, medicine, and architecture that was given to them by the gods. The Bible even mentions how Moses was trained in the knowledge of Egypt, hinting that the wisdom he carried was not entirely of divine origin, but tied to something older. So what if these prophets were more than just spiritual leaders? What if they were the last remaining scholars, tasked with preserving the forgotten wisdom of a lost world? Their role was not just to communicate messages from God, but to pass on knowledge that could help humanity survive and thrive in a new world. Could they have been the last line of defense against the loss of this ancient wisdom? The divine or the ancient? Revisiting the nature of prophecy, when we think about prophets, we often imagine them as people chosen by a higher power to deliver messages to humanity. These messages are typically seen as divine, meant to guide people in times of crisis or confusion. But what if the divine aspect of prophecy isn't just about a spiritual connection to a god, but also about passing down ancient knowledge that has been carefully preserved? Could it be that prophets were not just divinely inspired, but were also carrying forward the wisdom of a much older time, knowledge that was stored by the ancestors of humanity? Many religious texts speak of prophets who were blessed with the ability to see beyond the ordinary. Moses, for instance, didn't just lead the Israelites. He also received deep teachings that influenced laws, ethics, and society. He was trained in Egypt, a land known for its advanced knowledge. Similarly, many other prophets across different cultures seem to hold not just spiritual wisdom, but practical knowledge too. In this sense, their connection to the divine might not have been just about receiving messages from a god, but about their ability to access and pass down wisdom from a much older, pre-flood era. One idea is that the divine inspiration these prophets experienced was actually a link to an ancient civilization's wisdom, something hidden in plain sight. If the knowledge of the ancient world was indeed more advanced than we think, could it be that the prophets were the chosen individuals to protect and share this knowledge, framing it in a way that people of their time could understand? After all, many cultures view prophecy as a way of revealing hidden truths, not just spiritual messages, but also practical knowledge that could help societies thrive. If we accept the idea that ancient civilizations were more advanced than we realize, it's possible that the prophets were tasked with passing on this knowledge to future generations, making it appear as though their wisdom came directly from the divine. In this way, the line between divine inspiration and ancient wisdom could be much thinner than we once thought. Were the prophets really just receiving messages from a higher power, or were they the last inheritors of an ancient, almost forgotten wisdom? This question challenges us to reconsider the very nature of prophecy itself. The enduring mystery, guardians of the forgotten age. As we explore the lives of prophets throughout history, we find ourselves facing more questions than answers. Were these figures truly divine messengers, or were they the last survivors of a much older, forgotten civilization? The more we examine ancient texts and stories, the more it seems that prophets may have been more than just spiritual leaders. They might have been the guardians of ancient knowledge that has been lost to time. The idea of lost civilizations and forgotten wisdom isn't new. Many cultures have stories of a time when humanity was more advanced, only for it all to be destroyed in a great cataclysm, often symbolized by a massive flood. But what if these cataclysmic events didn't just destroy cities and peoples, that they also wiped out the knowledge that had been passed down for generations? Could the prophets, often seen as divine figures, have been the last people to carry that knowledge? They might have been tasked not only with delivering divine messages, but with preserving the wisdom of an ancient, advanced civilization, keeping it safe for future generations. The more we dig into the history of these prophets, the more we begin to question the traditional view of their role. Could it be that they were not just telling people about the future or delivering divine commands, but were instead passing on ancient wisdom that had been carefully hidden to protect it from destruction? If these prophets were indeed the keepers of forgotten knowledge, their messages might have been framed as divine, because that's how their societies would have understood such profound wisdom. In the end, the question remains, were the prophets truly divine messengers, or were they the last heirs of a lost age? The mysteries surrounding them are still with us, and as we continue to search for answers, we may find that the truth is even stranger and more fascinating than we ever imagined. The prophets might not just be figures of faith. They could be the key to unlocking the hidden history of humanity itself.